Yeah. Okay, the Jentry Podcast. I know that you will be loving it. We here to break it down so that you start to understand your local government. Who are the leaders? Time to get active, do something about it. Dealing with jobs, the workforce, and affordable housing. Motivate and inspire. Elevate, take it higher. For the next generation. Knowledge is power for your community. Giving you the info that you really need. Time to make a change and a difference. Tune in, don't miss it. It's the Jentry. The Jentry Podcast. The Jentry Podcast. Making a change, switching it up.
Hello, and welcome to the Jentry Podcast. I am Jonathan Macy, your host, and today we have an incredible guest. We have Malick Gaye, who is the Vice President of Livability of the Nashville Chamber of Commerce. He's an incredible person. I've got a chance to just talk with him, and I wanted him to be the first one to kick off our Jentry Future Leaders Spotlight segment. So we'll be spotlighting and highlighting the young people that are really making these government entities run. So Malick, thank you for being here, and how are you doing today?
Well, first of all, Jonathan, I'm really honored to be here with you today. You have an incredible presence, an incredible platform, and I'm really flattered to be here. But today's a beautiful day in Nashville. I just came back from a little trip. It was a little bit cooler where I was right now, but I'm reminded that the South is the South, man. You know, it's funny, when I first moved to Nashville, people told me if you don't like the weather, wait 5 minutes and it's going to change. And that's still the truth here.
Very, very true. From that heat to the muggy to the sunny
Humidity.
atmosphere.
Yeah. But it's a beautiful city. You can't be too mad at it. We have so much green space here in the city. It may disappear in certain pockets, but it's a beautiful place to be.
Well, I think that's a perfect place. I like to always start these podcasts off. What is the secret sauce? What is the claim to fame? What makes Nashville the best place to live in America?
That's a great question. I love thinking about this question because it gets me talking about one of my favorite topics, which is opportunity and economic development. I think Nashville is a special place, and it's the place that it is that's attracting so many people. During COVID, you heard the numbers that 100 people a day were moving to Nashville. We're still not too far away from that. We're within the 50 to 100 brand new people coming to Nashville every day. And it's attractive because Nashville is one of those communities where, regardless of your background, your age, your ethnicity, or your career, you can find a pocket of Nashville that works for you, which is why we have so many people choosing to come here. From the economic development space, there's an anecdote we like saying that companies are chasing talent, talent's chasing community, and Nashville happens to have both of those. We have great talent. We have a workforce that's reskilling and upskilling. And we also have the pieces of civic furniture that just make it a fun place to live as well.
That's incredible. And I think you hit the nail on the head. Without that quality of life, you're not going to have the workforce. Without that education system and that reskilling you talked about, you're not going to have the industry. So I think that's incredible that you guys are very focused and then blessed to have that many people come to your city.
It's a double-edged sword.
True.
There are a lot of people who lived in Nashville for a long period of time and were used to the lower cost of living. And to be completely fair, and this is difficult for people to hear who live in Nashville, but compared to the national average, the cost of living in Nashville is still lower than the U.S. average. Our cost of living index on any given day sits at about 99.2. Now, there are extremities, and housing, we're inching up a little bit higher. I think we're about 112% of the national average, but it still remains one of the most livable communities, especially for young professionals.
I can understand everything feels like it's a gift and a curse, and that's just like kind of life. But you bring up young professionals, I have to check in. Do you know you were gonna be the Vice President of Livability, the Nashville Chamber of Commerce, when you were just a young kid? What was your background life, and how did you kind of get into a career in local government?
Absolutely. Jonathan, you and I have a really similar background, coming from households where education is everything. And our parents know that education is the leader to future prosperity, not just economically, but also socially, in a way that builds up the people around you. I was born in Senegal, West Africa. I'm the first of my parents' 4 children, and I was the only one born in West Africa. So I like making fun of my kids saying, or my little siblings, I call them my kids, saying they're not really Africans, they're just Americans, or African Americans, a little funnier that way. But grew up in West Africa. My parents had a job that caused us to move around a lot. So by the time I was about 7 or 8 years old, we were permanently in the United States, and I actually grew up in the American South for the most part. I've been in the South for about 20 years, most of my life. You can't tell by hearing from me. I'm waiting for my Southern accent to kick in. Hasn't come in just yet, but my parents were both in the college space in academia growing up. My dad was a college professor. My mom was a longtime admin, and now in their second careers, they decided to both be public school teachers. So they both teach public school in inner city Jackson. And for a long time, I thought that my career was eventually going to lead to that space. And still about high school, I started going to my dad to college and seeing the way you had to teach and see what teaching was like, and quickly realized that's not my ministry. So I took a pretty big pivot. I joined the military, spent 6 years in the military as a combat medic. It was probably the best 6 years of my life, Jonathan. Military that I went into isn't necessarily the same military we have today, but I think the bread and butter things that the military teaches, discipline, being able to leverage your skill set and work together with people who may not share the same background as you. It's the foundation of who I am today. And it's the reason that I can work in these political spaces today without losing my identity, but also being able to recognize that the demonization of people on the other side is exactly that. It's demonization. It's not necessarily rooted in truth. And in order for all of us to come together to work towards a better goal, we have to learn to do that exactly. Come together and work together.
That's incredible. And one of my biggest things is going to be like, what is one of your experiences that has helped you level up in your career? I know off camera we were talking about the quickness in some of your trajectory, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but is it that the skill sets that you learned from the military, would that kind of equate to some of your success, or were there other things that you kind of learned that have truly kind of, I mean, you've been on a rocket ship.
Thanks, Jonathan. I really appreciate that. I'm still trying to catch up with you over here. I think two of the things that mostly stood out to me, and two things that I actually try to do every single day, is one, use those lessons from the military of collaboration and teamwork. You could put me in a room with people with a language barrier, political barriers, any types of barriers, and I'll find a way for us to work together towards something we care about, because I fundamentally believe in my core that we're all closer together than we all think, despite what other people may make us feel. And then, Jonathan, I have to be completely honest. I owe every single piece of my career to my mentors. I've been incredibly lucky since a young age to be surrounded ever since I came to this country. And I was put in ESL classes because I spoke with a funny English accent. I've been lucky to have people older than me who have looked out for me, who have found my flaws and found ways to mitigate them, found ways to find skills inside of myself that I didn't know I even had, and to give me opportunity. Jonathan, I still have some mentors that I speak to on a weekly basis. They're my brain trust. It's interesting. One of my mentors actually told me this week that there eventually needs to be a pivot, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, from mentorship to having advisors. That's such an interesting pivot for me. And those are two very different things. And we spent a lot of time explaining them. Maybe we can get to it later. But between those two things, Jonathan, I have to say the most important one is building yourself up by having strong people around you who are able to support you, invest in you, and pour into you.
That's incredible. You touched on the skill sets in the military, that discipline, that ability to create a commonality with people that may not mirror you in any different way, politically, socioeconomically, nationality wise. But then also, I think it's so important that you put mentors and advisors. When I speak to, typically, I speak to, mayors, state senators, you name it, economic development director, city managers. And the one commonality is I had a great mentor that I either job shadowed them or I met them along the journey. And that's one of the things that they attribute their successes. So you have that forth from, it sounds like from very young, you were thinking about that. But yeah, let's get into it for the rest of our viewers that are thinking about having a great career in local government and beyond. What is a mentor to you, and what is an advisor, and when do you think the shift should?
Wow, that's a really great question. And I've been thinking about it ever since that mentor shared that with me at a breakfast earlier this week. So without having thought too deeply about how to verbalize this, I'd say a mentor is typically a person who has worked in a career identical or adjacent to what you're currently doing, and they're able to share those life lessons that are not only soft skills, but they teach you how to navigate difficult situations. We all have that coworker that we think may be difficult to work with, or that client that seems to have an increasingly list of things they want you to do that may not fit within the scope. Being able to navigate some of those difficulties and this is the most important thing. You have to stay mission focused. Regardless of whatever the crisis in front of you is, your only endpoint should be, does this get me closer to what the organization's mission is or my personal mission is? And I think mentors are the kinds of people who help you navigate those difficult situations and prevent them from snowballing and turn issues into opportunities, which is incredibly important. And, I think the advisor is an even more difficult one because advisors take all of that information, but they also look at your skills and weaknesses. And I think they think strategically with you. I like to think of them as a brain trust. So I have one that I even met with this morning with my business co-partner. And he is one of those ones, he was a former boss who's transitioned into an advisor role because now he's getting deep inside of my business. He's trying to understand what I'm doing. He's trying to think through my logic pattern and help me flesh that out, think a little bit deeper so I can get to financial, business, and economic goals a little bit quicker. But what do you think about that, Jonathan? What's the difference for you between a mentor and an advisor?
Man. So first and foremost, I'll admit I don't have a great answer, but when I think of the people that I've called mentor throughout the years, those were people that were typically older than me. I was in a place where they weren't always in the exact industry that I wanted to be in. They were somebody that was wise within the realm of business, but they weren't always in the exact line of business that I was particularly in. And yes, for those hard questions, they would say, well, have you thought about this? This is how I see the world. Oh, watch out for this. Whereas fast forward later in my career, typically when I'm starting businesses, I would have advisors, and those would be more of like the X's and O's and less like telling like stories and kind of explaining from a high level, more getting to the X's and O's. So like I was in doing some private equity work, and I had like a couple advisors. Like I had one person that was very well versed in financial analysis. I had one person that was very well versed in he was a subject matter expert. We were in the wellness space. So I think the advisors almost are more tactical. And with an advisor, like I've had advisors for previous companies. They were my age. Like they weren't they weren't any older than me. They just focused on something that I haven't been focusing on for 15 years, and they may have been. But when to make that switch, I think is kind of dependent on what you're doing. Like if I were trying to be a city manager and I came in like Parks and Rec, I want that mentor that's in that space until I pretty much hit that goal of being a city manager. And even still past then, they've probably been a city manager for 20 plus more years. I may still maintain that. But if I'm then pivoting to maybe, I would say I'm in that city manager seat, I may reach out horizontally to some other city managers or other people within the field. And we have a specific issue. We have natural disaster. You've dealt with natural disasters. I've seen how you've done it. You've come through them. Can you help me with the X's and O's of dealing with a natural disaster? So that's how I would put it. And I haven't put a lot of information or thought into it, but that is my takeaway from it. So what I flip it on to you now. How do you kind of
Jonathan.
see that?
Yeah, that was actually really thoughtful. And you touched on something that I think is the most important thing that you and I both know, but we didn't say out loud. Mentorship should always be full circle. You mentioned that you've had advisors and mentors that are your age. And one of the things I tell people I mentor today is that you're never too young to be a mentor to somebody else, because there's always going to be someone in your circle or someone adjacent to you who could benefit from something you've gone through, even if it was a couple of months ago, even if it was just a couple of years ago. And one thing that I admire a lot about you, Jonathan, is you spend a lot of time intentionally mentoring people younger than yourself, even if you're in a space where you're still learning from other people. And I think that's a really important thing to understand. With opportunity, with power, with privilege, comes a responsibility to take care of those around you, especially those walking a similar path, but just a few steps behind you. So I think that's really important too.
No, for sure. And I think that is a nice segue. There are going to be people that are listening to this that are looking to you as they're just kind of getting on their journey. I just did a focus group or a survey with over 261 young people, and they were 18 to 24.
They're future leaders.
Jentry Future Leaders. So one of the biggest things that came up was representation. They want to see people uh, our age group and younger that are actually in the spaces. So, and then they also want to be able to get an idea of what actually is being done. So, I'd like to ask you, what is the best part of your job, and what do you like the most?
Jonathan, the thing I like the most about my job is the fact that no 2 days ever look the same. I am the type of person who, if my calendar looks the same every week and my job looks the same every week and I'm doing the same things, talking to the same people, I'll be bored. I'm a crisis communicator. I like putting out fires. And the good thing about the policy space is, despite the fact that I believe in my heart of hearts that Nashville has the potential to be the best city in the country for a person to start a family, move their family, start a business, or move a business, I also know that we have true existential crises. We have an issue in Nashville where we need to build 70 to 90,000 housing units in the next decade, but we're only on track to build about 20% of them. We have an issue where it wasn't until less than a year ago that we did not have dedicated funding for transportation, which meant that despite all the people we have here, if you wanted to build a new bus or hire a new bus operator, build a new bus line, you would have to figure out what teacher is getting fired or which sub-district is not getting a new police officer. So Nashville has a lot of things going for it, but we also have a lot of space that we need to spend a little bit more time in. The thing that I enjoy the most about my job is that the opportunity to do good never ends. And the fact is that we're lucky in Nashville to live in a community where the business community, philanthropic community, and elected officials have a 30 plus year long history of working together on one plan to move Nashville forward. Not a lot of cities get to say that, and being able to work at the heart of it is such a special and fulfilling.
Yeah, that continuity is hard to come by. And my next question actually kind of dovetails into what you were just saying. I wanted to follow up, but what's the hardest part? But I love the fact that you talked about some of those existential crises that you have coming, because it's something we don't think about. We think about all the positives of, like you said, having a ton of people, but how does that bring about things like displacement? How does that bring about higher and higher housing costs? And if you're really thoughtful and thinking, but if you had to pinpoint, is there one thing that might be the hardest part of your job?
You know, Jonathan, and I'm going to speak. I'm going to take a moment of personal privilege to speak about a personal difficulty for me, and it's the fact that despite the opportunity in our city, despite the fact that we've doubled our GDP in the last 2 decades, despite the fact that per capita family income has increased by 12% in the years after COVID, outpacing inflation, we still unfortunately live in a city where there are haves and there. And Nashville is a unique Nashville has a really unique economic environment. Just for context, we are so stabilized as an economy in terms of our industry sectors that we enter recessions much later than any other city in the country and we exit them earlier. As a matter of fact, we were the fastest growing city after COVID. We gained more jobs in the year after COVID than we created in the years before COVID. No one else in the country had done that before, which is incredible given our hospitality base. But despite that, Jonathan, when I go walking in the mornings, there's still 19 unhoused people that I walk by every single day on my morning walk. That's less than 2 miles in a circle. Just 3 miles north of us, and the zip code, it may be 3712. I'll send it after this. For nearly a decade, was the district in the country that had the highest incarceration of Black men. I believe there was a time when nearly half of the Black men in that district were incarcerated at one point. Opportunity is not a universal thing, but despair is not universal either. We just have to choose where to put our energy and where to focus on things. Despite the amount of resources we have in the city, we can't tackle everything all at the same time, but we can support the organizations that are pushing for equity, pushing for the right things across the board. And it's a difficult thing, but it's also a good thing about Nashville. You're not going to meet any business people who say, we don't care about that issue, we're not going to support it. You build a coalition, you build a narrative, you do your research, you'll find somebody in Nashville to support your idea. So as long as we preserve that environment, I know that we can build ourselves into the world-class city we deserve to be. But there's still work to be done.
That's incredible. And that's, that passion, that introspection to even knowing the number of unhoused people on your walk is the reason that we wanted you on the Gentry Future Leaders. If that's not a future leader, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know what is. And it's hard to hear about the success that Nashville has and then paired that with the dichotomy of the lack of opportunity in certain spheres. But I know with people like you climbing up the ranks, I definitely can see this changing at some point. There's hope, and I feel like with hope comes change. So can you kind of walk us through? I really like glossed over it, and I don't want to do a disservice. Can you walk us through your career progression, just so people can kind of hear how this has been going for you?
Absolutely. I'll start really young. I got my first job when I was 15 years old because a Kroger, not too far away from where we live, zero point 0.7 miles away. I'll tell you why that's important. My dad decided I needed a job, and it's really important to me. He knew it was important to me. So he walked over to the manager where we buy our groceries from every day. He was like, my son turned 16 in a couple of weeks. He needs a job. 2 weeks later, I was getting swabbed and filling out paperwork, and I was pushing carts 0.7 miles away to save up for my very first car. I enjoyed that job deeply. I was pushing carts at Kroger for like a year and a half after work every single day. Eventually saved up enough money to buy a car. My next job after that, I went into the military. Those 6 years were incredible. I'm sure we'll get to that at some point. But around the end of my military career is when I decided that I wanted to try something a little bit new. I knew that I had to be in Nashville, and Nashville was where I was going to end up moving right after that career ended. And my college advisor at the time saw that I wasn't happy with where my college degree was taking me in the medical space. So he suggested there's this internship in Nashville. You spend 4 months up there. You get paid absolutely nothing. You get paid enough to live, just enough to live, nothing else. Can't even buy a beer. And you should go do it for about 4 months. And Jonathan, those 4 months turned into 5 of the most impactful years I had in terms of career transformation. I interned for a Blue Dog Democrat by the name of Reginald Tate. He'd been there for a while. He taught me the ropes. He introduced me to the right people. He shared that belief that I have in extreme bipartisanship, even in the face of starkness. And from there, I spent about 4 to 5 years moving up the ranks as working from an intern to an assistant to a legislative assistant, all the way up until I was the policy advisor for the chairwoman of the Senate Democratic Caucus, Ramesh Berry, who's still an incredible friend and mentor of mine to this day. She's now the leader of the caucus. She's moved up as well. But from there, around that time, COVID struck, and I'm sure your viewers and you remember this, but something changed in the wind around COVID in terms of political discourse. And all of a sudden, nationally, simple things that I think we've taken for granted as objective truths became shrouded in conspiracy and distrust. And I think fundamentally as a people, we began to distrust themselves. I think politics is always the canary in the coal mine because we have a habit of electing people at both extremes, Democrats and Republicans. They say the things we may not always agree with, but the things end up becoming the Magna Carta of our parties eventually. And we end up moving people to those extremes. And around the time of COVID, I started sensing that, and I decided my career in politics needed to take a pause until I learned how to adapt to that environment and how to communicate more effectively in that environment. So I did some work that I wanted to do to heal my heart a little bit. I worked for a little nonprofit called the Addis Clinic that does absolutely incredible work. They're alive to this day. They connect frontline health workers in the United States with frontline health workers in East Africa. So the basic model is a physician at Vanderbilt or your local hospital would be connected with a nurse or an EMS in Nairobi or Kenya or any part of East Africa. That physician or that frontline health worker in Kenya would go to rural and remote villages that do not have access to healthcare or extraordinarily limited access to healthcare. They would provide primary healthcare, diabetes tests, wound care, that kind of thing. And whenever it escalated to a level where it was too complicated for them due to health knowledge, whenever they got back to their apartments where there's internet, they would upload that. The doctor in your neighborhood would take a look at it after work, give their notes, look at the pictures, provide a treatment plan. It was asynchronous, so it would go back to that frontline health worker a couple of days later, and they would go provide care to that user. Incredibly fulfilling work. I did that for about a year and a half, working in communications for them before I decided it was time for me to enter politics again. But Jonathan, I have to be honest with you, I was really scared to go back into that place. I didn't know if it would burn me out all over again. So I decided to do an intermediary, which was the Chamber of Commerce. And I joined on again because I knew that this was a powerful political organization. Had been alive since 1840, so it has an incredible track record. And in my mind, even then, I knew that it was one of the most impactful organizations in terms of moving good public policy forward in a bipartisan way. So I led the communications for the chamber for about 2 years, in which we won national accolades, were mentioned in international news on a regular basis. And now I'm right back where I started in policy, working on livability policy like housing, childcare. So it's all full circle, Jonathan. It's all full circle.
Wow, that's an incredible. I'm glad I got a chance to highlight that. You never know where your steps and where your skill sets are going to be valued, appreciated, and while something may feel like burnt out, it was just pushing you to another direction that you needed to be and where you need to be at that time. And then you got that bug again, and then you figured out, okay, the chamber is actually where I need to be, where I can effectuate the most change. I love to hear that, and I feel like people are really going to appreciate as much as I do. Now, we spoke about your military service. Could you give me one story or event that was emblematic of your entire military experience? Like, if there's one thing that you're like, this represents what I did for 6 years or what it meant to me for 6 years.
I'll give you a story. It's a relatively short story, but I think it's emblematic of what it means to have served in the military at that time. And I've always been interested in volunteerism. That's really important to me. It's important to my family. I've volunteered ever since I was a kid and still serve on several nonprofit boards today. But there was a time that a former friend of mine and I were door knocking for the American Red Cross in West Tennessee, and we were trying to install fire detectors for people. This is in my civilian time, just had some extra free time, put on some jeans, and started knocking on doors in rural communities because it's the number one cause of preventable death in some communities. And there was a door we knocked on, and the person I was with was a white person. And I knew from the moment we knocked on that door that I was not welcome on that porch, that I was probably the only person of color who'd stepped on that porch. And it led to an unfortunate situation. You can imagine what happened. He shared some words, he said some things. We ended up leaving. Thing is, I'm a Second Amendment Democrat, so I don't play those games. But anyway, we ended up de-escalating and everything. But Jonathan, I'll tell you, I ran into that same person about a year later in uniform. I was walking through a Walmart. I ran into that person. I'll never forget that face. That person pulled me aside, thanked me for my service, and shared how they also were in the military. And I didn't tell this person this because I didn't want to ruin that moment, because I want to accept people for who they are in the moment. Maybe he had changed or something. But I think the most important thing to me was that there are things that unify us, but there are also things behind that that are just full of shit sometimes. Sorry, I don't know if I'm allowed to curse over here, that we just need to do a little bit better at working on. Because, Jonathan, if the American flag means anything to me, it means equality, opportunity, and protecting those who can't be protected. It says something to me that there was a time in our country's history where people with some of those thoughts could put on our uniform and proclaim the values that we claim to be in support of and go work overseas in support of those values. And things have changed. I don't really know if that completely answers your story, but I think that is one thing that stuck with me the most, Jonathan, in a really odd way, that the military is one of those spaces where that bias that I just described, you're taught in the military to eliminate it. One of the first lessons you learn when you join in the army is that you're not black, you're not white, you're not brown or anything like that. You're all green, because we're all green. We're all the same. We all work for the same team over here. And Jonathan, if I think we as Americans could embody that a little bit more, realize we're all on the same team, we're working on the same mission, we're all Americans who believe in liberty, justice, and taking care of those who can't take care of themselves, we would probably be the city on a shining hill we were promised. But we still have a way to go before we live up to our promise. We've only been a democracy for about 50 years, as far as I'm concerned, since we allowed 13% of our population the right to vote. So we have a little bit more work to do, Jonathan. Sorry, that was a bit of a long story, but that stuck with me. It still sticks with me.
As it should have. I think that is a beautiful message. We're all on the same team. And I think when I set out to even start this, that was one of my beliefs. I speak, if you've seen, we've done probably 30, I've done 30 some odd interviews from people from any and everywhere, both sides of the aisle, all types of views. But deep down, everybody wants the same thing that I'm speaking to. They want to make a positive impact in their community. They want people to have liberty. They want people to have the right to all the service, all the amenities, all the you name it of their community, just across the board. So I do feel like deep down we all are that. Are we there yet? No, I don't
We
think
got a
we're.
little more work to do.
Yeah, we definitely got some work to do, but I feel like at least my piece of the puzzle is just having open conversations and just showing people that everybody deep down kind of wants the same thing. They want to provide for their family, go home, maybe potentially buy a house in the future, whatever, the American dream is, that elusive American dream. But everyone deep down just wants
And
it.
Jonathan, I fundamentally believe that we talk about entitlement a lot in this country, and entitlement is always a difficult thing to talk about, but we are entitled the pursuit of happiness. We're entitled the peace of equal rights and equality. So I think that's one thing you and I really, really agree on fundamentally, that there's more that connects us and separates us. We just have to change the tone and tenor of the conversation to the right. Because someone benefits from us arguing.
Yes, for sure. There are, I think, many people that benefit from that divisiveness, but I definitely agree with you, and we drank the same Kool-Aid on that one. Now, as far as the job, I want to get to the nitty-gritty. These are the things that people don't necessarily talk about enough. What are some of the impacts of working for the chamber and then working in public policy has done for you lifestyle wise? Like, what have been some of like the business benefits? Like, do you like the job security? Do you like are there any like long-term benefits? Has it given you just anything that you can think of? The reason I'm asking is like, why should a young person maybe think of getting into public service outside of the I get paid and so if you can kind of get into that a little bit.
Absolutely. I think the number one reason why every single young person should at least career or at least consider a stint in public service is for two reasons. One, there's going to be a major job gap in the next couple of decades due to aging baby boomers leaving the economy. The AI bubble is going to burst eventually, but AI is not going to replace the tens of thousands of baby boomers who are retiring every single week. So that leaves a really unique opportunity for young people who are interested in being mentored to, who are interested in learning from some of the best civil servants we have, to enter that space right now. I mean, today, the last 2 to 3 years, and probably the next 5 to 6 years. It's incredibly important. It's incredibly rewarding because at the end of the day, I love this Obama quote. If you wouldn't let your parents or your grandparents make your playlist, why would you let them make your laws? It doesn't mean that they have bad taste or anything like that, but their lived reality and their perspective on the future fundamentally differs from our lived realities and the obstacles we're going to have to face in the future. So if you want to have a hand in shaping not only what your 30s, 40s, and 50s will look like in terms of how you're taxed, how business is regulated around you, what opportunity looks like, and what civil rights are protected, this is the time to consider how you can contribute to that while also having a career. I mean, I won't hide the fact that I not only enjoy this work, but this work is enough to sustain my lifestyle in a meaningful way. I'm not making millions of dollars. The Chamber of Commerce is still a nonprofit at the end of the day, but I think there's sometimes a perception that working for the government just means you're going to own one car and one house your entire life. But there are many different ways of getting inside of this space and still developing a meaningful future. And one thing to add on top of that is that there are different ways of getting engaged in public service that doesn't necessarily mean working for the government. I'm not a government employee anymore. I work for a nonprofit, but I consider the work that I do social service and government service because fundamentally our partners are not only the business community, but it's the mayor who we meet with on a very regular basis. It's the city council who we were just with earlier this week. It's all of the county commissioners in the nearby communities. There's so many different ways of engaging. So we need more young people to run for office. You take the lid off of that, I won't stop talking.
No, definitely. I love where your head is there, and I always laugh. I always get excited during the podcast when I figure out like, okay, I know what the title's gonna be. Mission that would you let your parent pick your playlist might be in the title somewhere. I don't know what it.
Absolutely. Look, I'll send you the full quote later, but look, man, if you're not going to trust your grandparents to control your playlist, they should control your economy. Either.
No, but that definitely made a ton of sense to me. What advice would you give your younger self, or anybody that's one of those like 18 to 24-year-olds I talked about, that's thinking about maybe getting into a career of public service? What advice would you give them?
Jonathan, the biggest piece of advice that I would give a young person considering public service, which is also the biggest piece of advice I would have been able to give myself when I was younger, is to not hold on to to not let go or let the idea diminish that the world can be better than what you see right now. I think cynicism is a natural byproduct of getting older because you realize the way things are and why things are the way that they are. But the idealism that I had when I was younger, I have to fight every single day because it's that idealism that makes me think that if we're a city where per capita income can grow by 12%, we can be a city that has a social promise that none of our residents will have to live in the streets under a bridge, getting their heat from a sewage. I think that idealism is something that older people are not evil, they're not cruel, they're not apathetic. I think they just understand the way the world works and why things end up the way that they are. So if you're a young person thinking about public service, write down the way you think the world should look, the values we should have, put it on your phone, put it on your mirror, and never let go of that. Because that idealism is what's going to change the world fundamentally.
I love it, and that's part of the reasons that I like speaking. And while we're shifting, not shifting, but in addition to the work we're doing with the current leaders, the younger leaders, that idealism, that different way of thinking, like it's infectious. Like it truly is, and it's like
And
wow,
it's possible.
yeah,
Yeah, it's possible, Jonathan. It's
definitely,
possible.
it's
Jonathan, I
definitely
want to ask you though. You're one of the smartest young people I think I've come across in my entire life. I'm so curious, Jonathan, what piece of advice do you have for the young listeners who are looking for a career in public service?
simple. Try it, whatever it is, try it. Go fast, quick, make mistakes, learn as much as you can, wash and repeat, just whatever that, like, I don't care what it is and how similar, I guess it is like the idea of idealism. Like, if it's running down to try and be the president of the United States, go get as close as you can, talk to as many people as you can, go down LinkedIn, scour it, see how many people have talked to the president, and just go through that list and just get that idea and then see. And maybe you get to the 100th person that's talked and worked with the president. And you're like, you know what? It's not for me. But at least you tried it and you had that information. And then whatever the next thing that you need to have 100 conversations is, you still remember those 100 conversations you had with people that have touched the president. And that could help. You don't know how that could help on the
Wow.
next thing or on the 100th thing that you had 100 conversations on. You harken back to the first 100 questions with the president. And that's the thing that puts you over the top. So try it. That would be,
Jonathan,
yeah.
I absolutely love that. And this is something that I realized a little later in my age is that having that fieriness, that passion, that ambition is such a powerful, important thing. And the most important thing to know about that is that it exists in each and every one of us. We just have to find the thing that activates it. And something you and I both have that I may have not realized when I was younger is we have that fire, we have that passion. It may just not look in a way that people are used to it being, but it's there. I see it in your eyes. I see that brightness. I see that hunger for more, hunger for change. We each have that. We just got to find the thing that triggers it, activates it, and we just can't let it go. That's the way you build a rocket ship. You just can't let it go.
Love it. No, you got me fired up. That was off the cuff. No, and I just it really, and I do get fired up because I'm thinking of like some young person like hearing it and like they were like, you know what? I
Turn
thought I
up.
have to do it.
Turn up. Don't today. Start what you're doing today, right now. Yeah.
Just start. And then it's funny. Penultimate question is what would you change about how local government and even as an intermediary you definitely work with the local government leaders. What is one thing that you would change if you could?
This is going to sound psychotic. I'm going to say it anyway, Jonathan. I think if you're over the age of 18 and you have a social media account, you should be locked out of your social media account if you don't vote. You have so many opportunities. I'm being so serious. You have so many opportunities to vote. But you got an hour to spend on TikTok and Instagram every single day, but you're not voting in your local elections. You're not voting for your mayor. You're not voting for your DA. You should be kicked off social media. But in all seriousness, I think the most important thing that we can change about local government and the fundamental obligation that I think we fail to do as a society is to match the way people engage with government with the way that people naturally engage with themselves. Our local government needs to be more digital. Our local government needs to be accessible online. Our local government needs to change the vernacular that they use. The further government is away from the people, the more opportunity there is for it to do things that we fundamentally disagree with. Millennials are the biggest voting bloc right now in this country, but we have the lowest voter turnout rate and voter participation rate. I fully sympathize with my millennial friends who say we don't care about voting because it doesn't change anything. The system won't change until we understand the system, understand the mechanics of the way it works. Our budget shouldn't only be a 250-page document that only the most privileged of us can sit down and read and understand. It should be accompanied with a full 2-hour explanation from our mayor, line by line, explaining where our taxpayer dollars are going. Not our mayor specifically, but somebody. But government needs to move closer to the people. And it's not government's job to do that. It's the people's job to demand how we want that. So I think that's the thing that I would change. I would get people more engaged, not necessarily to vote or to rally, but to just fundamentally understand the way our government works and to be a part of it. We are a representative democracy. We're just missing the representative part of it for the most part.
No, I mean, you hit the nail on that. That's why I do what I do. I wanted to demystify and amplify.
Yes.
Coming from when I was at JP Morgan, I quickly realized it's like we use big words that confuse people so we can charge them more.
For reason. Yeah, for good reason. That's right.
But I was like, and I figured, if I just made these words easier to digest, more people would do it. They would get it. So the same thing is how I tackle this. It's like, if we can get through some of the jargon and, I work with different government entities and like even across entities, the jargon is so different.
Absolutely.
And
by design.
If you can just get it down to like the simplest form and then put it in a way that actually people are going to take a look. Like what you say with the budget. My immediate thought was like, that budget needs to be broken down into 60-second shorts on TikTok.
There we go. Yes. Explain it to me.
Exactly.
Spoon feed it to me. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's why I do what I do. The podcast, I obviously have the full version, and then I have the TikTok. I have it everywhere. So in every form, so the people that need to see it can see it.
And Jonathan, the thing is, your work is actually doing the same thing that I have in mind, because the more you demystify financial systems, the more people understand the way government works. All of our systems are so fundamentally intertwined that when one suffers and when one mostly suffers from a lack of community understanding, the rest equally suffer just as much. So by uplifting what you're doing, you're uplifting all of us. So thank you for your work too.
No, my pleasure. Thanks for people like you supporting. And my last question is it's like it could be a difficult one, could be an easy one. What is your dream job and or the future impact that you want to make? And that could be in Nashville, United States, that could be in Senegal, that could be wherever. Just what is that dream job and or future impact that you
Oh, two things, Jonathan. The dream job is actually venture capitalism. My business partner and myself have spent the last 18 months teaching each other how to code. We, I believe, are beneficiaries of the AI tech creation boom in the same way that our predecessors were beneficiaries of the dot-com boom. So we're currently building small web apps for niche professional spaces that we eventually want to leverage, since we're the founders, owners, and creators, into a venture capital firm. And the overall goal of that is to create, it's a model that I don't really know has the name right now, but we want to create a business that has a social promise to it as well. We want it to be a public benefit corp, but we also want the proceeds we make to benefit society in some way, whether it's taking care of our on-house neighbors, whether if it's creating childcare spots or sponsoring them. But that's our overall goal. We'd like to make a lot of money, of course, but we think with that money comes an opportunity to do a lot of good. And then the second goal that I have personally is I think the most important institution in our society at any given moment is the free press. It is our canary in the coal mine. It tells us what's going on in our world. I would love to see a world where young people took the traditional press model, turned it into a model where young people can digest news, digest information, and it not be sponsored, not have advertisements, not have a political slant, but just objectively educate our young people. In a perfect world, I would love to buy an existing paper and do that eventually, but I think it's a challenge to create something like that, but it's a challenge that I hope to take on in the next couple of years.
Beautiful vision. And I think two things can be true. You can make a lot of money, you can do a lot of good in the same entity.
Absolutely.
And the free press, we're very similar. I went down that rabbit hole when I was working in private equity. I was thinking of buying up some newspapers because
It's not hard to do.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
definitely.
It's a lot of work, but it's not hard to do.
Yeah, we're very similar. Man, I just want to say thank you. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day. I know you're a very busy man to come fellowship with me and share great information to our viewers. So Malick, just wanted to say thank you to our viewers. Thank you. I hope you truly see we listen here at Jentry. We didn't do all those surveys for nothing. You guys want a representation and understand the impact, so we are doing that. And this is Malick Gaye. He is the VP of Livability at Nashville's Chamber of Commerce. Malick, thank you again, and to our viewers, excuse me. Have a great one.
Jonathan, thank you. It's been a privilege. And if we're still recording, just a note to all of our visitors. Jonathan, in many ways, is the blueprint. At the end of this podcast, if you're not already doing it, go to LinkedIn, follow Jonathan, look at his path, Google him. He's Googleable. That's a really robust example of how you can both be successful professionally, but also make an incredibly lasting impact on our society. So thanks for taking the time, Jonathan. Thanks for having me. It's been an honor.
Really appreciate that. And thank you for your kind words. And yeah, follow me on LinkedIn and reach out. Like actually, I just said reach out to 100 people. You never know if you're interested in local government, private equity, finance, sports, whatever it is.
You heard the man. Reach out to him. Follow him and reach out.
I'm happy to help. So thank you so much and have a great one.